So I just want to start by saying a massive congratulations to Vicky, Joanna, Scott, the whole Arts for the Blues team. You've got a fantastic collaboration and a partnership going, and it really speaks to the ethos of this programme that I'm going to very, very briefly talk to you about today. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes telling you a little bit about this programme. As Vicky says, it funds Arts for the Blues along with actually 28 different projects across the UK, including one in Blackpool and another one across the northwest, and in fact all over the UK. So it's led by the Arts and Humanities Research Council. I've been working with them for the past 3 years, developing this programme in collaboration with a whole range of individuals and organisations and partnerships. It's, a key partner is our National Centre for Creative Health. You're going to hear a little bit more about the National Centre for Creative Health from Alex Coulter, our director, later. It's also been a huge honour to work with loads of different organisations and individuals, like colleagues in NHS Personalised Care, the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance, the Lived Experience Network, and many different individuals across different sectors who've helped shape this programme. Although it's led by HRC, it's actually funded from across the whole of the UK research and innovation, which there's a whole series of acronyms there, but they basically fund all a lot of the research across the UK. I mentioned the National Centre for Creative Health. I'm not really going to say any more about them, but they're our national partner. And they really help us think about the translational aspects of taking this research and thinking about where do we want it to go, as well as then, of course, through the brilliant funded projects that you can hear about some about today. So the programme is a £30 million spend across 5 years. We're currently in phase 2 of that spending, and we just have a live call at the minute, so I know some of you here are busy writing grant applications for phase 3. That's our largest phase, and we're looking to fund projects of up to £2.5 million across 3 years, where we can really start to test out some of the work that is going on within the programmes. So I just wanted to tell you just a little bit about what the aim of this programme is, and we've already heard some of these themes today. So you talked about some of the issues around within health systems, how we can make a change for the people that need it most. And that is really what this programme is about. How can we bring about systems change, particularly around health and social care? In this programme, it's really about how we can bring communities together. So a key aspect of this programme is supporting funding going out into the communities. So often in research, a lot of money goes to a lot of universities, and we don't see a huge amount of change happening for people living in communities. We really wanted to make a difference within this programme that speaks to how we can draw on expertise that exists within our communities. Many of you here are working for organisations, small through to large, that are making a really big difference in terms of communities' lives, particularly around inequalities, thinking about the poorest people living in the poorest areas. And what we're interested in is how we can bring those two systems, that community sector and the health sectors, together more effectively. We know that there are really, really big challenges in bringing those two systems together, not least all the different languages, the funding streams, and the operational aspects of how those systems work. And what these programmes are looking at is, with local and regional levels, what kinds of changes are going to make a difference to those people's lives who need it most. And a really big element of this research programme is, importantly, how we can integrate lived experience into that systems change research. So again, so often within research, that knowledge and expertise is held within those universities. It's the work is done by postdocs and academics and PhD students who are doing really great work. But actually the knowledge and intelligence and expertise that we have out in the community is actually where we can bring about the best amount of change, we think. So a key element of this funding is that it has to be spent on the community sector, and it has to be spent on making opportunities to bring those communities into that research base. That can be by, for example, employing community researchers, it can be getting them out into those community sector organisations, and you're going to hear about some of the brilliant partnerships that have gone on within Arts for the Blues shortly. So I'll just finish by telling you a little bit about what we've found so far in funding all of these different programmes of research. I think many of this will be familiar to many of you. We know that community-based solutions offer a really brilliant approach to thinking about targeting health inequalities and tackling health inequalities. Lots of community organisations, particularly grassroots ones, are doing really, really brilliant work supporting people in their area. But the biggest challenge that we have, which has already come up, is that issue of funding and scalability. So how can they get access to different streams of funding? How can they get access to, for example, understanding the complexities of those systems that they want to work with? Those are big barriers to them scaling up or targeting their work in different ways. We also know that the current health systems, we're spending billions and billions on those a year. But what we know is that people are getting iller and they're living longer with poorer health. So we're throwing money at systems at the minute where we know that there's lots of ineffective work going on by a load of brilliant people who are doing great work, but feel also very frustrated within the systems that they're working in. So what we're interested in is understanding those complexities of those systems to see how they could work better. And you're going to hear some great examples of how Art for the Blues are doing that here in the Northwest. We know that a key element of that is understanding what you've got in your area in terms of what's called asset mapping, understanding what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. Where are the really good bits of work that are going on, but where are the gaps? What are the barriers to accessing those resources, those facilities, those organisations and those assets? We know that when it works really well, it's when you involve local people in that decision making. So we need to look at all those processes and think about how we can involve local people in that decision making process. And that is a key element of work that's going on within this research programme. We also have found that we need to make it a lot easier for decision makers to tackle inequalities. So within health systems, they've got lots of data, information, intelligence that tells you about, for example, who are using health systems a lot, what kind of health conditions they've got, what some of those issues are for those individuals who, for example, are facing complex health issues, multiple comorbidities, for example. But what that doesn't necessarily tell you about is these, what we call the wider social determinants of health, those wider environmental, living, financial, economic and employability challenges that individuals are facing, which we know have a huge impact on people's health. We also know that those community organisations, particularly those grassroots organisations, have brilliant intelligence on the ground, who those individuals are and who those communities are that are vulnerable and that need more support. So what we need to do is bring those and pull that knowledge together so that we can make our services and provision and activities and programmes targeted towards the people who need it most. And some of the best examples that we found where that's happening is where we can see co-location of services, collaborations and activities across organisations and programmes. We've found from this programme and from lots of related programmes that that is the most effective and cost-effective way of tackling inequalities. And you're going to hear from some brilliant examples today. There's examples like the Grange in Blackpool, which I know are doing really brilliant work around that idea of bringing together activity with a cafe, a shop, a library, community services, a theatre. So the more examples where we're seeing this co-location activity, we can really see differences being made and opportunities to be able to reach out to those audiences. So I'm going to end there and invite you to learn more about Art for the Blues. And if you want to know any more about the Mobilising Community Assets programme, then come and grab me in a break. But I wish you the best of luck with your conference, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about Art for the Blues. So thanks, Vicky, and thanks to the whole team.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thanks for that. It's been wonderful working with Helen and having her as a support during the whole process. So it makes things much easier when you have that frame around you, right? So Helen, thanks for that, and continue to work with that, and make sure that you take our funding bit that we're preparing frantically into serious consideration. But that's not, today is very much about the Arts for the Blues that got funding from the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the phase 1. It has been supported by the German Arts and Health Lab in its dissemination, and at least the final report that we are going to be talking about. Most of you here, I know we have a lot of stakeholders around, have been part of this project, so we'll remind people of what it is that we have done and what is Arts for the Blues. But we'll go shorter there and longer on what you have said and what we made with what you said, how we understood the feedback we got from lengthy and several meetings we have had, focus groups and so on. I'm going to invite core team. We're going to be standing for a bit. Yeah, we're going to be standing.
Should we just go there?
Yeah. Why don't we come?
Thank you.
So Joanna, Emma's here already. Becky is needed.
Becky's here.
So Becky's Scott made his appearance in the morning, so we're not going to bring him in. He's a poet.
Yes.
So that's, I think he made his mark. He's making his mark in many other ways, but for the purpose of this presentation, it's the four of us here. So a brief reminder of the Arts for the Blues, and we'll do an introduction to the strategic commitments and recommendations that came out of how to scale up place-based arts initiatives that support mental health and well-being. You should have had the report when you registered, so we'll go through it to the degree that makes sense. We are going to show some video recordings as well, so for the onliners and for Jake, if we can turn the right deck on for videos to be appropriate. Can I also say that part of this report and the work has been supported actively from the start from our lived experience experts, and I see some of them have arrived a bit later, so I didn't see you before we start. So we have Karen here, we have Paul here, I think, we have Leslie here. So their voice will come up through Becky at different times during the presentation. Are we ready to start? Yeah?
Am I clicking?
Yeah, you're clicking. So here
All
you are.
right.
Joanna.
Okay, so shall I just go here? Right, cool. It's very bright in here. But I'm the clinician of the team. I'm a counseling psychologist. I think you've probably all heard about Arts for the Blues, so it will be just a whiz tour, really. So Arts for the Blues is the group psychotherapy for depression. It's a creative group psychotherapy for depression. And it's Vicky, Scott, and myself that started that. And it's a collaboration between Edge Hill, Salford University, and Greater Manchester Mental Health. Go here? Or which first? All right. So just a key elements, really, how Arts for the Blues developed. So we've been working really on Arts for the Blues about 8 or 9 years now, from 2015. So it started with the literature review, like any research project, really. So we've done 78, we've gone through 78 papers and done a thematic synthesis of really key elements. What is really helpful for depression? So we've looked through, evidence-based literature, like on CBT, in person-centered therapy, psychodynamic therapy, as well as arts psychotherapies, and we've identified 8 key ingredients that are really essential when working with depression, and I'll tell you a little bit about those key ingredients in a moment. But then what we've done, we've created a workshop out of those 8 key ingredients, and we've really tested it with the public. So various different conferences, we've had a focus group with that, and we were asking people, what's helpful, what's not helpful about this workshop and about the model, and really that's fed into development of the model. Then the same workshop and the focus group came to the NHS, to the primary care setting, into the IAPT, and we've done the same with staff and with service users within the IAPT setting. At the same time as we were doing the clinical work, we've also been doing the work with the sort of the more creative work. So Scott and Vicky's led on that. I mean Scott. Really, Vicky's asked us Scott to translate the results of the Cochrane review on dance and movement therapy into a performance. So we've discovered that actually, as they were trying to translate that into the performance, there's a lot of similarities with creating the clinical model. So really, the findings from that also fed into development of Arts for the Blues. So then we also created a training package and went into different settings. I think we've trained around 400 therapists now and artists and students as well. So their feedback and what they said and their comments also fed into development of the model. So we've been, throughout that process, we've been funded from the Liverpool Clinical Commissioning Group and Edgehill and Salford, as well as UKCP. The films that you're going to be seeing, especially the first one, was funded by UKCP. So, oh yes, it's just a model. You've probably seen it 50,000 times, but this is Arts for the Blues model. So you can see the big arrow. It's 12 sessions, and at the top with the darker 4 areas, that's from the group theory model. So we've got the kind of introduction section of the group, then building strengths and challenges, then addressing building it on the group and strengths, and then addressing challenges, and then conclusion. So that's the sort of overview and an umbrella of the 12 sessions. But within those 12 sessions and between those phases of the group, we've identified those key ingredients that I was telling you about earlier from the literature. So these are in the yellow. So the beginning section of the group, you've got key ingredients like encouraging active engagement and learning skills. Then in the second phase of the group, in the building strengths and resources, you've got developing relationships and expressing emotions. Then moving on in the more kind of a deeper phase of the group work, you've got key ingredients such as processing at the deeper level and gaining understanding. And then in the closure section, experimenting with different ways of being and integrating useful material. So those ingredients can be at different parts of the group work, but this is sort of focus sections that we've kind of outlined. And really that's providing an umbrella for practitioners and service users to do things that are right for the service users and in line with the practitioner's training. So different creative activities that would meet this particular key ingredient. So I'm doing this one. So as we were developing the group, we've also tried to build evidence. Is this effective? So our first full 12 sessions group was an online group with a group from Mind, and our representatives are here with us, Karen, Leslie and Paul, that took part in this group. From that group, we've actually learned that we've had lots of positive sort of qualitative results, but also quantitatively, we've learned that there's a difference in anxiety and depression in particular. There's a significant change, statistically significant change. I mean, the sample was very small because it was only 7 people, but it's promising. And basing on that, we're now developing larger studies, including an RCT study that will take that further. So that was the first line of inquiry, and the second line of inquiry, which we're also working on, was research in schools, and that was actually a randomized controlled trial. It was one of Vicky's PhD students, Zoe, and she's done a study with 56 children, and also amazing results in terms of anxiety and depression and well-being, and really quite surprising results in terms of sleep. because it transpired that the sleep improvement and quality of sleep was sustained following a year, after a year follow-up. So that was quite an amazing result. So Vicky will be telling you a little bit about the stakeholders events that we've had because of our funding. But last year, I think over the last year, our stakeholders events kind of took part in sort of last year June, and then sort of further on in the year. We had lots of really lovely interest from the community to bring Arts for the Blues to different organisations, and one of them is Greater Manchester Mental Health, and we've been in conversations and invited really to include Arts for the Blues as a routine delivery, and that it's taken time really to prepare it in the right way. So now we're starting the groups in June, and so that's a great success. We also in conversation with 1 Point Bolton and 6 Degrees in Salford as well, and the groups will be starting there, I think, around autumn time. But also we're having a dialogue with Greater Manchester CAMS, so yeah, we will aim for that as well. And All the Hay, and yes, actually quite a few organisations. So, right, so I came to the little film. This is the 1 minute film, not the 6 minute film, so you've probably seen it, so it's just a reminder about the group and what the service users think, and I think we say something as well.
The Arts for the Blues is an evidence-based, creative group psychotherapy.
In a typical Arts for the Blues session, we may be talking for a period of time, we might be writing, we might be using movement, we might be drawing. There are all these different ways of getting at our sort of underlying experience.
It is a therapy that we envisage will help people change.
It's made me rediscover myself, my true self.
The thing I found about all of it is it's non-judgmental.
I actually like me now. I found an inner strength.
It just is so helpful every day.
And it does work. It's better than clonazepam and Valium, isn't it?
So I've talked a little bit about Arts for the Blues, but now we will move on to the next part of the presentation, because we've used Arts for the Blues to think really how to scale up the projects like Arts for the Blues into the community and into other sectors. And Emma will tell us a little bit about the method, how we've gone about it.
Yes, so we, as we were saying, quite a few of you here today came to our stakeholders events and training events that we held. So we had 225 stakeholders that came to events here at the Rose Theatre. We had some online as well. We had our lived experience experts, around 6 that came to the focus groups. We ran lots of focus groups all at the same time. It was really exciting event that we held last June. So we did the 2 stakeholder events. The focus groups were 43 participants there. We had managers from cultural settings, healthcare settings, we had community organisations, local authorities as well. And then we had 4 training days overall. And the training days we delivered to 182 participants, and these participants were from varied backgrounds. We had practicing therapists, artists, and arts therapists as well. So through these consultation meetings and feedback, this is where we gathered our data for how we could scale up the Arts for the Blues to reach a much wider community. So, is this
Yeah.
The hope is that the report that Vicky's going to talk to you about, the audience for that report is those artists and therapists and arts therapists that came to the training and might want to come to future training as well, and might want to implement this model into their practice. It's also designed for training programs, professional associations, those arts and cultural organisations, so at an organisational level as well, mental health and other charities, but also within health and social care settings as well. So this is who the report is aimed at. So it's quite a wide audience, right from practitioners up to health and social care organisations that might want to implement it in their services. And Vicky's going to tell you a bit more about the scope of that and what the report tells us.
Vicky and Vicky.
So yes, we looked at the place-based arts initiatives, and I guess we use the Arts for the Blues as a core example, but the idea for the report is that this will be relevant for projects like that. It will not be relevant for any arts projects. So they have to have a particular starting point in a service, a community organization, or a neighborhood, have to involve an intentional aim to improve mental health and well-being. And there are some art projects that are meant to be one-off and not to be repeated again. That's not what this is about. So this will be for those who have the potential to be scalable and to be sustainable, and have the intention and willingness to do that, right? So that's just as a preface. We did that because we thought arts are important, not a luxury extra. That's what one of our frontline artists claim. However, we know that for arts initiatives, arts projects are faced with a number of different challenges. These are some of the challenges that came up from research. We found a lot of stakeholders talked about policy priorities that haven't caught up with changes in the community and public health yet. Funding has come up again and again and again, and has come up earlier today as well. There are a number of people in the NHS, for example, who have a faith in the arts, but they don't have permission to use it. It's a hierarchical system that doesn't allow for change to take place. There are issues around risk, issues around considering the artist as having a professional bias, coming into the service attitude that is too evangelical, according to one of our stakeholders. And then we have challenges around how, we already mentioned that earlier, the issue around the research evidence. What is the research evidence that is acceptable and accepted by the NHS? Health services expect a specific type of evidence, and with the Arts for the Blues, we try to sort of build with what is accepted as evidence within the health system. However, when it comes to artists themselves, there is a challenge from the artists that say, well, the art cannot be measured, cannot be quantified, cannot fit within that structure. So research may not be relevant. So that's some of the challenges we came up, we discovered in our process. However, there's a need to overcome these challenges. One of the managers say we're all meant to deliver high quality care that's meant to be care that is safe, care that is equal, efficient, and effective. And for this reason, we set up to do answer questions around how to scale up projects like the Art for Blues and a wider community as a way of tackling health inequalities. We did a realist evaluation, we had a number of theoretical assumptions. We came up with 4 different levels for projects to be scalable. We need to think about what's happening within the project, what's happening within the organizational context, what's happening in the policy, and we need to be thinking about vertical and horizontal levels of scalability. I'm going to talk about a couple of those levels, and the rest of the information you'll find in the report, just because of, sort of this can be a long presentation otherwise. I'm going through all of these different levels. This is the model we came up with as a result of that, and I'll deconstruct it a bit so it will make a bit more sense. So at the project level, we found out that as we were exposing people through workshops and focus groups and all of that presentations to the Art for the Blues, it was appreciated as a scalable initiative because it was adaptable, it was clear, it was collaborative, it was evidence, personalized and transformative. So it had features that lend themselves into a scalable activity. According to a lived experience expert, this is what they said.
Yes, let's come here. Come here, please. And so our lived experience expert said, I just lost myself somewhat, and that's what Arts for the Blues gave me. It gave me focus, it gave me clarity, it gave me confidence, and it made me feel that I was a better person, and I've carried that forward today.
Thank you. So because of these findings, we recommend that at the project level for a place-based arts initiative that supports mental health and well-being to become scalable, it needs to be adaptable to address diverse mental health concerns and well-being needs. It needs to be clear, so it is easily understood. It is collaborative to support trust and relationship. It is evidence-based to convince different audiences, and that's sort of multiplicity of evidence as well. Personalized and transformative. So the acronym we use for that is ACCEPT. At an organizational level, this is what a lived experience expert said, identifying a problem in what is already in the organizational context.
Although we don't see each other, all of us, but we keep in touch. You've got that support. If you go through the national health, you haven't got anything like that. You come to the end of your 20 weeks, and then it's like, off you go, and you're lost.
So for a project fits within this wider context, and that wider context has to have an understanding of what the initiative might have to offer, resources, inspirations, skills, etc. So these are our recommendations with the associated acronym. The organization needs to, in order to be able to integrate an arts initiative like this, it needs to have, to be able to nourish. So that's the acronym we came up with. So that this is, I'm going to go faster now in the process. So you can have a bit more look at the report for more details. We look at policy level. This is how the project fits within the organizational level, within the wider policy context. And these are recommendations from our end, targets is the acronym. And this is what the issue around policy and the need to do things now and change policies now becomes extremely important. And that's what one of our lived experience experts said.
A lot of people who need this model might not get that help at the time they need it, and that's what scares me, because they really do need it.
And following that, one of our managers from the stakeholders said, actually, this might be a good time. And we have the integrated care systems that are happening. For those who are not from the UK context, we have a policy shift and a change in commissioning where health services are invited to work closely with community organizations. And the manager said, because of ICS, the integrated care systems, there's never been a better opportunity in the last 20 years to be innovative and align what we do with the population need. I think that echoes a bit what Helen has said and what Niels said earlier at a global context. So that's interesting. That's felt on the ground as well. And this is how much excitement we get when policy changes, and we have Joanna in an excited place. So that's
Oh yes, it's me there. Oh, right.
So we'll look at the whole scalable model. The whole picture says that an arts initiative has to have certain features at the heart of that circle, and it can scale up if it has all these features we just described. However, we also need to be thinking what's happening in terms of engaging from bottom up and top down, in terms of involvement of workers, frontline workers, as well as managers and the policy drivers. And we need to be thinking about how we scale up things across sectors, across organizations, and across regions. So this is how, the whole picture of what we came up with as a scalable model. So we have a number of strategic commitments as a result of that. We're committed that working collaboratively with individuals and organizations to enhance current delivery of place-based arts initiatives, supporting them to become accepted. We are committed to working closely with organizations providing health and social care to nourish good practice and place-based arts initiatives and support mental health and well-being. We are committed to responding to and influencing relevant policy that can enable the integration of place-based arts initiatives in health and social care in a targeted way. And we are committed to working closely with lived experience experts, frontline staff, and local leads, and encouraging shared learning across sectors and regions. So this is our report with more details in your published piece. However, we are going to have a bit of a taste from what happened at the stakeholders events, the training days, and some voices that are not mine or Becky's from the people who took part in this work.
It's bringing a number of different therapeutic approaches together, depending on the goals of the client, the setting, and the practitioner involved. It's also using a range of creative modalities, so you might be using movement, you might be using mark making, writing, talking in any given session.
The theoretical influences in terms of the group work. So the first one is arts therapist theory and practice. For me, Natalie Rogers and creative connection, that's sort of the link for me, how I came to working as helping to develop Arts for the Blues. The Arts for the Blues is a group intervention, and it's a group intervention because we think that groups are important, changes happen in groups, and I'll say a bit more about the value of the groups as a form of engagement. Is it clear as a model? Yes. The activities, the listing.
Well, this came up on the project that you organised, and everything sounded kettles, work,
It gave me focus, it gave me clarity, it gave me confidence, and it made me feel that I was a better person. And I've carried that forward to today. I'm a lot calmer. I don't let things fluster me as much anymore.
When you start expressing yourself, you find your talents, you find your worth, you do things that only you can do.
Also, so much of what you bring in is in your subconscious to begin with. So you're not necessarily even aware of how these changes are taking place over time. One of the things I think is really important in this work is that it is seen to have parity with other therapies and other interventions.
It's not just another type of therapy that we're having to resist, as equal credibility.
One of the things that Art for the Blues is trying to address was the accessibility, and that also comes down to language as well.
But while we've got this opportunity to actually really, really rethink the way we work, you know, I think it's important to think about the evidence as well. I think it's really important to think about all of that.
Stories are really powerful. So that voice again, you know, video is a good example, but you've got to have many of those examples.
Actually, case studies that are so powerful, but almost have those like creative case studies as
Yeah.
well. There were trees, there were caves, there were rocks, there were mountains, and you had to put yourself on where you felt you should be on the island. It was the first one last week, was it?
And we did it about 3 times actually to
Did we?
see where we were, and it showed where we were at the beginning. And we didn't see that until it showed us.
If the gatekeepers don't believe in the model, they won't make the referrals into the programs. So training gatekeepers and winning those over is absolutely key to this being a success.
If you're talking about scaling and making it possible for diverse groups, we were asking about which kinds of groups we think might benefit from it. I think it's useful to have key ingredients because, so say for ESO students or a lot of whom are refugees, asylum seekers, etc., some of those references wouldn't necessarily work.
See, it's taught us techniques to use in day-to-day life.
Help me, it's changed me.
I'm a lot calmer outside. The world around me seems to be too busy.
Metaphors are really powerful. So how could we turn something into a metaphor? So we're talking about the weather. If you had to describe yourself as a type of weather, how you would do that, and then you would pick that material that would represent that weather to you.
Our idea was to do something similar to choosing an object to allow people to have a lot of choice about how they wanted to introduce themselves, but give them just like a range that's visible in front of them so they can pick one thing.
Record what your experience has been. Use images, colors, words. So that's the end of this presentation. We'll have, I'm not sure we have time for questions, but we'll have, do we have time for questions? We have time for questions, excellent. Just to say then, very briefly, we need to thank the Arts for the Blues Lived Experience experts. Thank you guys. We have a number of people who have endorsed and contributed to the report and endorsed it. So we have a list of named contributors. We need to thank our funders, and we need to thank the Neil specifically, he comes with a picture, for the forwarding the report and for the dissemination purposes. So we are open for questions. Just to also let you know, we'll discuss these recommendations further. We'll discuss them further on through a panel discussion. So we'll look at the what is usable from this report and people's context. But anything in terms of clarity now, or anything that will not be part of an implementation thinking, please come in. Jackie, welcome to Liverpool Dorms, even. Again, we haven't seen you for some time. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Vicky. And thank you, it's been a great morning. So I'm Jackie and I'm a dance therapist, but I'm also recently taken over as the manager for the art psychotherapy team in Bristol, inpatients. And I just wanted to thank you all really, because over the last 2 years, I've been sending all your videos and all your evidence to our bosses. And because I'm now one of the management team, I get to go to all the managers' meetings. And so I keep on and on with all the evidence base. And like 5-minute videos are so powerful. And they can see, actually, in work, they can see that the art psychotherapists are doing a good job. And having the evidence to back it up is really helpful. And so they're very supportive. But we kind of do need what you're doing for me to be able to keep emailing it around. So thank you.
Any more questions? Andrew?
Thank you. I had a question on scalability. And depression and anxiety are clinical terms for a host of issues: social isolation, loneliness, on a psychosocial level. And I think one of the most amazing parts of the scoping review in 2019 was that it just opened up the healthcare sector to also looking at interventions by artists as being good for health. And when artists become stakeholders, I think the scope of scalability really increases, doesn't it? It's not just clinicians, and the biggest challenge today is lack of clinicians. I'm a drama therapist and a counseling psychologist. I work in that context. My question, therefore, with models like Arts for the Blues, what is the scope of artists taking this forward? One thing we have in the Indian and Nepal context where I work is that we have clinicians attached to artists running groups, and those are specifically for well-being, groups for promoting well-being, where you have a clinician one could consult, or a clinician you could go to for supervision. So what's the scope of artists really taking the work forward?
Yes, we have thought about that and debated it over the years a lot. Originally, the Art for the Blues was only for qualified therapists, whether they were verbal therapists or arts therapists, which was sort of a better fit, if you like. But we were training only qualified therapists to think about sort of a short-term intervention that would be appropriate for things like primary care services in the NHS. Since we got funding from HRC, we opened up the frame extensively, and we had a lot of discussions around how do we do that to make sure that there is safety attached to that, issues around risk and all sorts of things. We put together artists and therapists in the same training programs with the view that this training, by working together, was one of the theoretical assumptions actually we had, and we'll discuss that tomorrow in the training slot. So learning from each other was an important thing. Learning limits of practice. Verbal therapists need upping their creative skills. Artists need to up their therapy skills and so on. So there is a sort of mutual benefit from bringing people together and knowing what is the context and what's the aim. Well, how is this used? You know, sort of how can it be used in communities safely? And we'll have examples of that, and we'll see how we have used it in a community context in north of Liverpool with a Liverpool Lighthouse. Although we sort of we had a clinician in the team there running the group, Emma, as a therapist, but still through that we learned how to scale it up without necessarily the need of a clinician. Do we need anything else? No? we debated that so much, and we want to make sure that there is a safety, but we don't want to limit the practice, because that's absolutely vital that good work is out there and usable. Yeah?
Hello. Art is not a luxury was a statement that was up earlier today, and completely I agree, but it was perhaps not so widely accepted across the board, so much so that it needed to be stated. So how do you convince disadvantaged or minority groups that this programme is for them, that they can access this, and that art doesn't need to be a luxury?
Yeah, and we're going back to question Neil's got earlier in terms of accessibility and use. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. It depends on the context you're working with, in my experience, because there's areas where I have worked in communities where art's certainly not a luxury, and people do come in straight away because it's creative and it's not verbal and it's not heady and it's not something that you need to think about your problems and all of that. So it creates a massive accessibility opportunity for accessibility. I think there are different things for different. I don't think this is for everybody either. So other people were discussing with Everton in the community. George mentioned it in the morning, where football and arts are delivered next to each other, and because somebody may go there for football, they also have access to arts and see that that might be something I could also try. So there are different ways of thinking. I know Rebecca does it through food, right? At least one of the cooks you have brings the community in, because communities that need to eat, right? So I remember when you started there, so there are different ways of making it accessible, I think. I think that the art in itself has the potential, right? Because it bypasses words and language and creates opportunities. But there are different ways of thinking about it. Do we have a better answer, panel?
No, I don't have a better answer, but maybe I just say something. Yeah, I don't. It's a nice question, but actually, when we put it out there, people were interested. So there's just we kind of went with the energy and with the flow of things. And I think that actually the highest challenge that we had was in the hospital setting, inviting staff to kind of do something for themselves and have a sort of well-being sessions, and that's where we actually met the challenge. And people were sort of in a different space, perhaps people wanting to kind of provide a good service for clients and for patients, and didn't kind of want to think about themselves. But yeah, that's it.
So we're going. Oh, do we have a very quick one, Carol?
It probably isn't, but it can go into the pan. It was around where the work is placed within a local or national context, and I'm really interested. And this is probably too big a question, but I'll leave it with you. In terms of the wider public health diagnostics, when we look at health inequalities, we often see correlation with deprivation, poverty, poor education, skills, employment. It doesn't exist in its own bubble. So how important will it be for this work to influence, local authority, public health policy, national decisions around engagement? It's a very big question, sorry. Anyway,
I think, Carol, you're moving to the panel discussion. Excellent. Hold these thoughts. Let's think about it a bit more. We have coffee, and now I think coffee and tea.